that signed up and is not here will can relive the glory of this program. Um, yeah, we don't have a special guest for this particular movie because we thought, it's just a regular nice movie, not topical like a documentary. So we thought, well, we can just have a fun discussion. So we're excited to have you all here. Yeah, please feel free to be unmuted and just jump in with your comments because we're small enough to do that. Um, and yeah, let's get it going. I think Therese has a couple of questions to get us all started off with, and then we'll see where this conversation takes us. So Therese, take it away.
Yeah. Well, first, I just wanted to see, I have not read the book, but I believe Kathleen has, but has anyone else here read the book?
I have.
Yeah.
Okay, you have. Okay. How did you think the book compared to the movie?
It's been a while since I read it, but I think they did a pretty good job. I think in some ways, it seemed like it moved a little slower than the book. I don't know whether there was just like more description in the book and so forth. But it followed it really well. I mean, the plot and everything, as I recall, was pretty much the same.
Yeah, that was my impression.
The
too.
scenery and everything they had of that lovely little town was kind of nice.
Yeah. It was funny. We were just up in Hyannis this summer because my sister has a house in Cape Cod, and it was much more lovely. Hyannis was much lovelier on the movie screen than it was in person. This sort of oceanfront areas are very pretty, but the town itself is a little bit, I don't know, kind of run down. But yeah, it's lovely. They spruced it up and changed the name to Alice Island. So
I thought it kind of looked. I don't know the other as well, but I thought it kind of looked a lot like Nantucket.
Yeah.
Which has that very absolute Cape Cod, everything, a lot of stores and a lot of little restaurant kind of look. And you wonder where the people who actually work there live from the
yeah, no, it's a crazy expensive place to live.
Yeah.
Did you think, Kathleen, it followed the book pretty well?
Yeah, I think so. It again, I read it a long time ago, but I thought they did a pretty good job. And I thought it was wonderful. Really well done. Trying to get the captions going here. There we go.
You did say that you thought it was interesting. One of the characters, I guess the main character, looked different than what you had.
Yeah, than who I envisioned. He was a grumpy bookseller guy, but my memory is so bad on it that what was your thought, Kay? Did you think that he kind of fit the description in the book pretty well?
No, not really. He seemed different than what I imagined him to be.
Yeah.
But
Nancy, did you have a comment?
He did not look like the guy I knew from Big Bang, but I guess it's been many years since they filmed the.
Is that right? Who that was?
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
I
didn't put that together.
Crazy. Huh.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. Gosh. He looks totally different with a beard.
Yeah. Well, and the one, like the guy, the cop, I was like, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? It was David Arquette. I'm like, oh my God. That was a, blast from the past.
Actually, his acting, I thought, was some of the best. David Arquette.
Yeah.
His character showed quite a bit of development and just different facets to his character. I thought that was one of the best acting jobs in the movie.
Yeah.
Was this based on a true story?
I don't think so. Not to my knowledge. I don't believe it was.
Yeah. It is fiction.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
I did.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was a coworker of mine was just asking what movie we watched, and so I was giving him a little synopsis, and he was like, "Oh, so just like a little slice of life," and I was like, "Yeah, pretty much, like just
Yeah.
kind of a, within an hour and a half or 2 hours or however long it was, just kind of like, the events of life,
Mhm.
new people coming in and other people leaving, and yeah."
Yeah,
I-
oh,
I'm sorry. I actually loved him in the beginning. I loved his groupiness.
yeah.
I think when he closed the bookstore and he said, "Bring all your purchases as if there might ever be any." I was
Yeah, that
rolling
was
on it.
funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I thought in general it was really well cast.
yeah,
And boy, the little girl was just phenomenal.
yeah.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yes, all of the little, all of the
Yes.
little
All of the
girls.
little girls were really good.
Yeah, that's true. She grew up but
Mhm.
I was just like, wow, that kid can act, or all of those kids can act. But and I thought the writer, what's his name? Dan?
Daniel?
Oh my, yeah. He was a despicable character, but a good one.
Yeah, I remembered him from watching I don't know if anyone ever watched the TV show Felicity, but he was in that TV show, which I really enjoyed in my college days.
Interesting.
Did anyone think on when you heard her story, he had entertained her as a little girl, babysat her, and did you have any sense that he had any idea that she might be his daughter? I mean,
Yeah.
that just kind of like came completely out of left field for me. I had not guessed anything like that.
I thought they did a very good job with that surprise.
I
Very,
agree.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were a bunch of things that that kind of caught you, because even when he fell down running, they said that, he was out of shape and all that kind of stuff. And for a bit, it didn't even occur to me that it would be something, it would be cancer.
Yeah.
And so all of that was like little twists and turns that I thought made the writing and the acting really good. I
Yeah.
thought it was great.
I was
feel like-
thinking heart attack or stroke after our
Mhm.
gray anatomy.
Yeah.
I'm like,
we should have been
"Oh,
able to analyze that immediately from all our courses.
yeah. I feel like the character they kind of left the string left hanging was the woman who was the ghostwriter for the
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
It was like-
that more developed in the book?
I think so.
Well, wait a minute. She wasn't really the ghostwriter. She was the writer.
she was the real
She
writer.
couldn't get it
Right.
published
Yeah. Sorry.
without
Yeah, she
using
was
a
the real
man's name,
writer.
the old story,
Uh-huh.
And she ended up reading the book at their wedding, like she had talked about. But I thought, well, you're a publisher, you could publish her real writing. I'm thinking there needs to be more development there, but
It seemed
Alas.
like an old excuse to me. It felt a little anachronistic, though, that she couldn't get her book published. That just seemed a little harder for me to believe in more modern times.
yeah.
Unless it was the subject of the book.
because
Oh, it was supposed to be an older person. That's right.
she
I
says that
forgot.
because women's rights have totally got to 100% already in our lifetime, right? No, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, I think
No, I'm only
I think it was age as well
Yeah.
as gender
Mhm.
that they wouldn't accept the book as well.
Yeah, I think in the publishing empire, I think that's probably true.
Anyway, I thought,
I think there were more details about how he got custody of the child.
Mm.
Because in the movie, it was like suddenly he has custody. That's not that easy.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, the mother was dead, so they didn't have to, worry about the biological parent. But for a man to get custody of a girl child,
Mm.
But he did raise her for like 6 or 7 years, I think, before that happened, correct? If I remember correctly. He didn't adopt her till she was, 5 or
little
7
older,
or
I
something
think.
like that.
Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 years, I
Or
think.
3, whatever it was, yeah.
Mm. It took a while to actually adopt her, but even to let, even the I'll say DFS, that's what it is here, would let him keep her as a foster child was kind of rare.
Mhm.
One of those movie things that kind of glossed over, I guess.
But on the other hand, it's a small community, and they could either take her out of that community to other foster care, because there probably wasn't other options on a small
Yeah.
island, or they could let him keep him. And I didn't think that out until you mention it now, but it didn't bother me at the time. But as I think it out, would you want her to be moved to New York or Boston or whatever,
Yeah.
or stay on the island where her mother, somebody might show up and know them, and so I guess it kind of makes sense.
Well, I think the foster care organization of that area, in the book, as I recall, there was a little more involvement. I mean, they were checking up on him and keeping track of what he was doing and so forth. And it was sometimes aggravating. And the child, though, was so bonded with him that they could hardly question, what his ability was.
Yeah, I assume in the book there wasn't and 3 years later and 5
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I did think I love the actress, whatever her age was. I did think that the 2-year-old was a little overly precocious,
She was a
because
little.
I usually can't even understand what a 2-year-old says, much less have her say intelligent things.
Well, her mother described her as very verbal. So,
Mhm.
and I thought,
True.
if Dan is her father, then he could certainly spew out the words, at least on paper. So,
True.
but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
what about the
Oh.
Tamerlane reference, the Poe book? Is anybody familiar with that? Amy, are you a Poe person? Nope.
I did read a lot of Poe. I'm not an authority, and all I remember from particularly in my high school days when I was doing a lot of Poe reading, that it was absolutely one of these totally minor works that, of all the things he's done. I mean, he's the founder of modern detective stories. He's the founder of science fiction stories. I mean, this guy has written so many great things, and this was like, everybody knows the Raven. How many people knows Palm the Bells? It was one of those kind of things. And that's all I remember about it. But I just remember it as a minor work.
Yeah. Well, and I'm still questioning whether crayon marks on the cover don't affect the value. I don't
Probably
know.
there are only 50 copies originally. Yeah, that probably wouldn't make any difference.
Yeah, I would say it would make a difference, but it would still be worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
Somebody
have
would still, there are at least 50 collectors who would still want to buy
Right.
a copy.
Was that a real book that Poe wrote?
I believe so.
Tamerlane by Edgar
Yeah.
Allan Poe.
Yeah.
Kind solace in a dying hour.
The guy was unbelievably prolific. I mean, he was his own editor, owned his own literary papers and literary magazines, and wrote constantly. I mean, the number of things I've learned over the years. We've kind of been tracking a lot of the places he lived over our road trip travels over the last few years. We've been to three of his homes. But the guy was terrifically prolific. I mean, he was writing constantly, and many of his works are shorter because they were for magazines. But
Right.
he wrote constantly, and he was really talented, and he was very much like the bookstore owner in that if you weren't up to his talent level, he made sure he let you know.
So where are his houses?
We've been to the one in Philadelphia. We've been to the one in Baltimore. We've been in the one in Richmond, Virginia. We've been to, he spent a year at West Point, and we visited there, but they don't have like anything anymore. He was there and he was kicked out. So there's no statue of him there as a proud cadet. And I guess he's lived in a few, he lived in New York, which we haven't been to. And I think another place in Virginia besides Richmond. I'm not sure. But he lived in like 5 different states as he moved around when he being married or moving for work or stuff, jobs or whatever.
Huh, interesting.
They also just came out with a movie that is about when he was at West Point. It's called The Pale Blue Eye.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, that's right. I want to see that.
Yeah, it's the detective is trying to solve a case at West Point.
Yeah.
And Edgar Allan Poe is a cadet there, and he helps the detective solve the case.
There's another one called The Raven with John Cusack, and there's somebody in Baltimore create a serial killer killing according to his stories. And Poe tries to solve it. It's really good.
It's interesting that when we were going through a lot of this stuff and reading about him, everybody knows he had the first detective, and that, Sherlock Holmes was kind of taken from him and all the other detectives. What I didn't realize is he wrote the first book about space travel to the moon, which Jules Verne gives him total credit in terms of where Jules Verne's got his ideas and how he would write all of his books later. The guy was amazing, and it was just a real shame that he died however he did. I can't say how he did, however he did, and at a relatively early age.
Wow. I had no idea you guys knew so much about Edgar Allan Poe. That's great.
Yeah.
Not that I've read that much.
You're looking at a nerd. You're looking at a nerd who as a junior in high school wrote a thesis paper on Poe's use of semicolons.
Oh my God. Seriously?
It was pretty scary.
But it doesn't. But Scott's a better writer of papers.
Yes, it's true.
Not true.
But they did get, fortunately, they got some money when they sold it. So his wife and his daughter had, you don't know how much he got, but you get the impression that.
Yeah.
I wondered what. Oh, go ahead.
I had a stupid comment. Go ahead.
We love those. We love those.
Yeah.
No, one of my favorite parts was when the guy, Dan, criticized or was critiquing his writing as the truck hit him about having written the accident scene and decided he actually did a pretty good job on it.
I know.
As the truck hits him to kill him.
I have to agree. That was one of the funniest tragic death scenes.
I know.
I can imagine. That was really well written.
Yeah.
Or actually, the movie was great because you saw the headlights. Fortunately, for my sake, they didn't show any blood or other stuff, but you got the point.
I know that was handled really kind of cleverly. I was like, oh God, please don't show this, and they didn't. So
is that the way it was handled in the book, or how was it handled in the book? Is that one of the places where they improved it or changed something or whatever?
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
That
if they
level
gave
of
a more
drama.
vivid description or not, but it was never anything in there that was like overly grossly described.
Right.
But
I just didn't know if they had him actually critiquing his death scene or not, or that was
I don't remember
something
that
added.
part.
he was such a egotistical person that
He was terrible.
there were several times
God.
he was, giving self-praise to him under his self-praise about what he had done and
Mhm.
how good he was even when he wasn't writing anymore. So,
Yeah. Yes, he sounded like he was kind of a little, I don't know, fluffy or something. I don't know. Fluffy writing, So, but
I did like that. The smile, right? Is because at first it seems like it's going to be this really tragic moment, and you're worried that they will both die, and luckily she doesn't. I mean, it's sad that either of them do, but yeah, it is kind of like it lessens the pain of it because he has that little smile at the end,
yeah.
and he's just happy that he did a good job with his writing.
Even the fact that she survived was handled really interestingly because it took you a little while to figure that out.
Yeah.
know?
It did.
yeah.
And
And
it's like all of a sudden she's in like the audience, we're at some event. I think
and
that
they
was
and
the
they kind
writing
of
thing.
explained along the way that she had the miscarriage where I figured she had become a mother.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's no reason to realize that she didn't have a kid.
Right.
I really liked the whole thing. I finished it about an hour ago, and my eyes are probably still red from
Yeah. It was a tearjerker.
Yeah, it was really some sad parts. I mean, I didn't like the fact, of course, that he got cancer at the end and they had to struggle with that. But, not every book is going to have a happy ending. But there was just some sadness. And he was so sad in the beginning, too. He was just like, grief stricken to the point of being, unfunctional.
And it's interesting because there's so many sad things in the movie or bad things in the movie, dying in a car crash, him getting cancer, the child
Mother
being
committing
left,
suicide.
how she was, whose kid she was, the suicide, all of those things. And yet, if somebody asked me to describe the movie, I think I'd say delightful. I think
that's a
the
good
balance
point.
of humor and the story of life, the slice of life concept of it was just enchanting, and it overrode all those things that were going on.
Yeah.
I was surprised that it was so sad at the end where because you kind of expect there's going to be this happy ever after kind of bit to it.
Mhm.
And he'd overcome the cancer or whatever, and wow. I kept expecting, they're gonna make this better somehow. And they didn't, but it was beautifully handled. It was really,
But it gave a chance for his sister-in-law, I guess, and the policeman to be a better, fuller character and move on.
Yep.
You could
Yep.
see it moving storyline. So it really, at the same time, it was tragic. It enhanced the story, I
Mhm.
thought.
It was kind of like one person's tragedy becomes a good story for someone else. The mother commits suicide, which is horrible and very sad, and yet he gets the child who just regenerates his entire life. And then when he dies, they have the bookstore and they're beginning again. So there's always this sort of regeneration in the story.
Mhm.
Which I thought was really hopeful.
It's the circle of life. They should make an African story about that.
Storied life. Thus the title. Yeah.
Yes, story life.
Sure.
That was great.
I really like the idea that the police officers had their own book club.
Yeah.
I thought that was pretty cool.
And a catchy name for it as well. Was it Chief's Choice, or was it?
Yeah.
Or
Something like that.
Chief choice. That was great.
yeah, I like that.
We should suggest that to our new police chief. See if he'll bite.
Yeah.
Fun.
He has to be a decent reader and be willing
Yeah.
to be part of a book club.
I don't
Yeah.
know. He might. He's a great guy. He's really fun. Nice person. So anyway, well, the Teresa and I were talking about all the literary references that there's quite a bit out on the online about that has indexed all of the literary references in the story, and from the Moby Dick piece, like the restaurant, and let's see, there's a whole bunch of them. in the book itself, like the chapter titles, they kind of had literary references and then a note from AJ Fikry about it. So like the title of one is Lamb to the Slaughter, which is a book by Roald Dahl, and he writes a little commentary about it. So that's how the book's structure, but the movie, they're kind of a little more woven in. But I thought that was kind of fun about, what's I learned the Queequeg cocktail.
Oh yeah.
I thought that was
Oh.
good. The Moby Dick reference.
I want to
it-
know
yeah,
what's,
it
I want to
wasn't-
know what's in that.
It wasn't
know.
clear whether she liked it or not. She kind of shuddered at it, and I was like, "Oh, I don't think that went well." or something.
Well, it was named after a harpooner, so maybe it was just like real, I don't know, difficult to drink. But I thought that was kind of fun to pick those out because they were little Easter eggs throughout the whole movie. So it was kind of fun.
I wondered what people thought, because I mean, I'm ashamed to admit that as a librarian, I've never read Moby Dick, but I haven't, and I
What?
just
Lucky you.
I know, and I just can't quite find the motivation to do so. So, I thought it was interesting what the characters said about, she's like, it's something we force kids to read and feel good about ourselves instead of just encouraging them to read something they enjoy. So
How many people had to read it in high school
Yeah, I did.
College, I think.
or college?
But I
college.
think, I don't
Required
think
it.
I've met a woman who liked.
Oh,
yes.
yeah, no, not
Oh.
true. There is a professor
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
emeritus.
Elizabeth
Oh, yeah.
Schultz.
It's her
Yeah,
favorite thing.
yeah, Beth,
Yeah.
Beth, that's her favorite book. That's right.
Yeah.
And she's taught it for years.
Yeah.
I
If
think
I
it's
bet somebody
dreadful,
like
but-
her, I bet it's a really,
I loved it.
fascinating read.
I loved it.
But reading it by myself, I was like, oh man, I don't know if I could do this.
yeah,
I needed
don't
a
know.
translator. So
I
but-
And you
didn't
have to
hate
read
it,
it.
but it
You
was
kind of have to read it.
long.
You kind of have to read it first just to read it as a story, and then you have to go back and read it for like whatever kind of symbolism and so forth that I'll
yeah,
say that it has.
it kind of struck me
I-
as one of those.
Yeah,
I mean,
I had
that's the-
forgotten that the chapters in the book, that really added a lot to have
Mhm.
each chapter had a book title and then a little note about it.
Yeah.
There's no way they could probably do that in the movie, but
Yeah, there weren't as many in the movie, but it was fun to kind of.
yeah.
In
I
the
think
book, are those chapter titles connected to the plot of each chapter? Like was the Roald Dahl story one with the
It
child?
seemed to, yeah, they were connected somehow.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it made kind of a really nice framework for it. So it all kind of fit together well. So
I thought it was funny when I guess it was a made up story that the cop was telling towards the end of the movie about finding that kid reading Infinite Jest.
yeah.
And I just thought it was funny because there's another book I have not read, but I at one point decided that I should read it. And I started it and I just couldn't get into it. And it's so long, but it's one of those books that I just, you'd heard so much about. And I just finally was over it and I put it on my driveway.
No.
And then you drove over it.
Pick it up. No, I didn't run over it. But I did just decide I was over it and I didn't need to read it. And I gifted it to someone else.
There was a book in the 70s and it was called The Book of List. And it
Yeah,
would just list
do it.
things.
I'm gonna do it for you.
And one of them was the most famous and best books ever. And at the top of the list was War and Peace. And then there was another list of all the books nobody ever read, ever wanted to read. And on top of the list was War and Peace.
Yeah. There are those certain books, I don't know, that you just get in your head, you have to read it to be a true intellectual or something. And
Yeah.
you just, sometimes you can get into them and sometimes you can't, and
Yeah.
it's okay.
I thought the bookstore was actually a character.
Oh,
that
that's
was
a
kind
good
of my
thing. Yeah, that's a
impression
great
with the novel too. was that,
reflection.
yeah, the bookstore is a character
Yeah,
in and of
definitely.
itself.
And that makes sense since the little girl whose name I can't remember at the moment, Amanda? No,
Is it Maya?
Maya.
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 Kept greeting the bookstore, when
Yeah.
she'd get up, good morning, bookstore.
And
And
then
the
it had a
bookstore-
beautiful garden in front of it. I thought, wow, it just got like better and better.
Yeah.
I know, it was cozy in there, and I liked, like, during the holidays you could see the decorations in there. It was quite cozy.
It's nice.
Yeah.
Lots of fun pieces to it.
What is it you're trying to say?
One of
Yeah.
the things that I liked a lot about the movie was the sense of community that was built and all the connections that were made because of the bookstore, because of literature, because of readers, because of writers. I mean, the little girl ends up there because her mother thinks she should be raised in the bookstore. That'd be a better place.
Yeah.
And even the sheriff, the police chief, who becomes a part of that community of reading and becomes a happier person as a result of it. And I really like this sense of community connections and shaping that was done through the bookstore and literature and reading and writing. I like that a lot.
That's a great point. That's true.
And didn't he, the police chief actually say that the island wouldn't be a community without the bookstore when he was persuading her to, we can take it over.
Yeah.
I just loved the end when that young guy, excited and fresh-faced, gets off of the ferry to sell the book. I thought, what a perfect circle, but he's
All
so
comes around.
enthusiastic. Thank God he didn't meet the first bookseller.
It's
She
great.
was enthusiastic too.
Yeah, I know, but look what she had to encounter.
Yeah.
Did anyone see that? There was a recent article in the New York Times about, or feature on some town in, was it New York or somewhere on the East Coast that had made up of several small bookstores. Each one kind of had its own little niche market.
Huh.
I don't know if anyone saw that.
Oh, I missed that. That sounds kind of fun.
It was, yeah, it looked, I don't know how you make it in a place like that, like someone was saying earlier, but it sure seems nice if you can find a way to do it.
Yeah.
Those little
I'm
communities.
not saying that running a bookstore is easy. It's obviously very difficult, especially in this day and age. But I remember when our kids were going to KU and was it Borders?
Yeah.
Borders opened up here and everybody said it will be the end of all the bookstores. The Raven is finished. Everything is finished.
Dusty
And
books.
the survivors were the bookstores.
Yeah.
There's a, what can you recommend me? How can I get you? I know the books you like, kind of sense of a small bookstore, which allows them to survive that the big stores don't. And the new CEO, I guess, of Barnes and Noble is redoing his whole chain because he said we forgot we're a bookstore, and he's trying to save the company by making them into a sense of a smaller bookstore where they won't have all the other stuff there, and they can help their customers and recommend things. I don't know if he'll be successful, but he's right. That is a success story to books, is those, certainly, obviously, a ton of people buy books online, but I still see around me here and in other places we've lived, the survival of small bookstores.
Yeah.
I think it's an important part of the community, not just a bookstore. You're right.
Mhm. That was great.
Yeah. Think about, I mean, yeah, both the Raven and the Dusty Bookshelf, they're such great spots. And
yeah,
they, you know, each kind of have their own thing. But yeah, the Raven, I mean, they do so much now. They have so many community events, which is great. So yeah, they're really, I mean, they've always been wonderful, but yeah, it's nice that they're really reaching out into the community more now. Plus, that's great.
Did you ever read the Diary of a Bookseller?
Oh yeah,
The Scottish bookstore, used bookstore. It's hysterical, but it's just it's a true story. But I mean, it's just the life of trying to be a bookseller, and it's in a small town in Scotland, and just how much he hates people and hates books, but he's just stuck in this thing, and it's just awesome. I don't know. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I love the author that came to town, the so-called author of The Late Bloomer.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. It's like, that is my nightmare. It's inviting an author to town and have it be him. Oh God.
By the way, I did this incredible double take when the voice of the author early on, when AJ is reading the book and you've got the voice of the author reading the book to him. And I thought I totally recognized that voice. And I went looking, and it's Scott Brick, and I've never heard of him. And I don't know why I felt like I knew his voice, but it just, did anyone else know? Because apparently he's done other narrations, and I wondered if maybe I knew him because of that or something. But it was just really familiar to me. Or he sounds like somebody else. I don't know which.
Yeah, I did not pick up on that, but that is not a surprise. Yeah.
My big problem was I kept asking Kathleen who this character was, because some new character popped in, and I thought, wait a minute, am I supposed to know this person? And she'd go, I'm not going to tell you, it'll ruin it. Because it was like when the author showed up, you know, the real author showed up, or when the other one, I mean, there's just 3 times I did that, and I kept, okay, I got to be patient.
I have to admit, I did think that author was a ringer. I didn't realize that the real author had brought him in, but I didn't believe he was 80 years old, or looked 80 years old, or looked like he could have written that book. And so I knew that there's something wrong here, but I didn't put it together with a otherwise unknown writer.
Well, you'll be happy to know I've looked him up on IMDb, Joe Penzak or something like that. Anyway, he's known for this movie, which is his most recent, and then the movies Maniac in 2018 and Blood Feuds in 2016. So
he's also narrated 800 audiobooks.
Oh,
there you go.
There's a really good chance you might have read one of those.
That could be it. Maybe I've heard him actually narrating stuff, because there's another actor narrator out there who has narrated some of I think it's Ivanovich's books.
Okay.
And he has narrated some of the nature series. And when I hear him, I'm like, I know that voice. He has a wonderful voice. So
yeah, he's narrated Clancy, Clive Cussler, Mike Crichton, John Grisham books.
John Grisham.
That
could be it.
I mean, his list is pretty phenomenal.
That's amazing.
I didn't catch on it at all, but it's interesting to look him up.
Wow. Well, I like the lead woman. I thought she did a nice job. Lucy Hale. She was very likable. So.
Yeah, I don't think I'd seen her in anything previously.
She's been in quite a few things.
Oh, I'm out of the loop.
Yeah, you and I both.
She was good. Yeah.
I remember David Arquette, like, hasn't he been an actor for a long time? I mean, my
Yeah.
memory is like in the 80s he did all
He's
sorts
got
of
brothers too. I
Their
mean,
whole
Oh, yeah.
family,
Yeah.
isn't
Patricia
that?
Arquette, his
was in
sister.
Mediums.
sister, yeah, right.
And his grandfather was Charlie Weaver.
Okay.
But that goes back a long time.
Charlie Weaver?
Yeah.
Did you say?
Oh, he was the
Yeah, right.
Oh,
Hollywood Squares.
Sorry.
he was in the middle
That's
of
right,
these
Hollywood
squares in
Squares.
Hollywood Squares.
Right, Charlie, he was the old,
Letter from
right,
Mount Ida.
Right.
Letter
Oh, that's
from Mama
great.
in Mount Ida.
Sorry, I was thinking of someone else.
Yeah. You're thinking Dennis Weaver.
Dennis Weaver is what I was.
Not
they're,
Arquette.
they're different people.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes I can tell people apart, sometimes I can't. It's a failing of mine.
Well, I was kind of surprised. I see your point, Kathleen, though. He doesn't turn up a lot, but
Yeah.
he's known. And I thought, wow, like, where'd he come from? And he did such a good job. He was amazing, I thought.
No, he was really good. Yeah, he's
Yeah,
just
he
one
was
of those
great.
actors who you see a lot. But Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Wow.
Anyway, all of his siblings are actors, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
There's
Roseanne,
5 kids.
Yeah, one of them was the medium,
Yeah,
um,
that was one of his sisters.
her sisters. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. And Patricia Arquette, that one sounds familiar. Which she may have
That's the-
been bigger.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So anyway, but yeah, pretty fun. Well, I thought it was a good. It turned out being. At first, I watched it. I was like, I don't know, and then it was better the second time. So, Shelley, did you have a comment?
5 stars.
I know. I
Okay.
was going to say, we need to do our rating. So
Yeah.
everybody vote.
You give it.
What 1 to 5?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Sorry. 1 being terrible, 5 being awesome. I think I'll give it a 5.
It's
good.
great. I really enjoyed it.
I love documentaries, but it was nice to just see a story.
I agree.
I
It's been a
agree.
while.
Nice change of pace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you would have somebody from a bookstore.
Yeah.
We talked about
Or
that.
maybe somebody from a library, that would work.
Hey, at your service.
If only we knew someone.
Yeah. Who could that possibly be?
Only we knew.
So.
Oh,
Well,
I don't remember how many familiar faces and how long everybody's been going, but the man who did Taxi, the Iranian, the movie that we
Oh,
watched, he was
Oh.
just released from prison,
Oh wow.
and he had gone in to complain about the treatment of so many of the protesters in Iran, and they arrested him on an old charge. Statute of limitations didn't matter. And he finally went on a hunger strike and they let him go. But I thought it was a really good movie when we had seen it. It was pretty powerful. And it was really different to have a film where the director and the actor was someone from such a country with so many problems. That it was a pretty powerful film.
Yeah, I thought that was very good. I'm trying to remember what the name. It was like, was it Jamal's Taxi? Something
Yeah,
like that?
it's something like that. Yeah, something Jamar's Taxi.
Yeah.
Mhm. I remember that.
Yeah. That's the one that Kathy like roped her neighbor who lived behind her into being our special guest. But she was awesome.
Yeah.
The architecture professor.
But it worked.
It did. It did.
She
I
was
think that-
really good.
I think my favorite comment of hers that whole evening was, essentially everybody thinks it's so ridiculous, but you just have to, you have to kind of play the game. And I mean, otherwise, obviously you end up in prison, but it's
Yeah.
like the thinking folks are like, nope, I don't buy into this, but I'll just do it because I have to.
It was Jafar
Jafar. That's it.
Hanaz,
Yeah.
not Taxi.
I have to go back and watch that one. I wasn't around for that.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he had several other movies since he got into trouble so much.
Yeah. Well, Jack, do you want to talk about our documentary for next month, our game plan?
Next plan is Martha, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, next month is Women's History Month, if I remember correctly.
Mhm.
And Maureen worked. Maureen may have to do this.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna let Maureen do
I
it.
worked at a school with a woman who would do our the celebrations for Women's History every year, and she brought in some pretty amazing guests. But I don't think I realized she taught English, and I don't think I realized until later that she herself was a pretty kind of famous filmmaker as far as women's studies kind of film.
Shorter documentaries
Right.
about unknown women.
And the only reason we found that out is I was looking on Facebook and we happened to reconnect with a friend from college, and I looked and this woman was one of her friends. And this kind of thing happens on Facebook where you go, how do these two people I know each other? And it turned out that we had talked to our friend who has done a lot of work in women's studies and feminism, and had actually been one of the hunger strikers in Illinois at the time that they were trying to pass the ERA. And she goes around and does
One
women shows. And we asked her if she wanted to do something, and she said that really wasn't her thing, but that Martha would do it. So I think Martha will be wonderful because she was an English teacher and has that teacher thing. Yeah, she taught high school. That's what we're having. We asked her, and she is going to choose her own films.
Have they figured that out, Therese?
I think, yeah, I think you mean as far as which movies?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there were 3 on YouTube.
Short.
They're all pretty short because they're like 15 to 20 minutes, something like that. So yeah, I think we were just gonna go with them all.
She's been involved in women's studies and women's activism for probably 60 years. I think she's about 85 now and still very active.
Yeah.
And not only travels around the United States, but around the world, women's projects. She's had this production company since I think the 70s, if I remember
This is the
correctly.
Wild West Women.
Yeah, well, now called Wild West Women. It started under another name. And our friend Zoe works for her, has been a co-producer, and that's how we got the whole thing together. But so I think it should be interesting. I think we had a chance to learn about some women in history that I didn't know at all or didn't know very much about, and a chance to talk to somebody who's been active in that field for a lot of years and get a really good perspective. And I think it'll be really interesting because we have the perspective of an 85-year-old who's been working on it from that point of view, and a 18-year-old librarian, because we know Teresa's only, you look at her and see she's only 18, talking together about where things are, where they come and where they go, and the history. So
Well, the other thing I think will be to actually talk to a documentarian.
Yeah.
We have a friend who we talked to a while ago who's a documentarian, and to tell you the truth, I can never quite get the idea of how it's real and yet photographed at this, filmed at the same time. It always seems like it's got to be kind of staged. And she had told us some of the things that, they do, and many of it is very real. I think they run a lot of camera before they.
Yeah.
And these films are on YouTube.
Right. So we'll send you the link, and they're all free.
She just recently put her own channel together and put all 12 or 13 of the films she's made on it. So you'll be able to use that link or use that to get to other stuff later if you're interested in it.
And so the date on that one is March 22nd. So,
Yeah.
but we will be sending out the March events here fairly soon, and you can put it on your calendar. But I think it's kind of a neat opportunity since we've got a personal link with Jack and Maureen. So
Yeah, yeah, looking
Don't
forward
hold
to
that, don't hold that against her, please.
it.
it could be fun. So, well, about that time, any
Wow.
further comments before we sign off and try to think? I really, really, really enjoyed the movie. So
Yep, good choice.
kind of a nice,
Yeah.
a
good
nice
choice.
break.
Yeah.
Maurice deserves a lot of credit for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
Just go with it. So, all right. Well, until next time, thank you so much for
Yes.
joining
Thank
us,
you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Everyone.
and we will see you soon.
Have a good
Bye.
evening.
you.
Bye bye.